Guys, what Olise is doing in this World Cup is simply incredible. And the most interesting part of his high performance in France's games is that he is playing a completely different role from what we are used to seeing at his club. For Bayern Munich, he played one way, and in a very short time, he went from the end of the season at Bayern Munich straight into World Cup preparation with France, starting with a certain role, doing well, then playing another type of role, changing positioning, and becoming a sensation and one of the main players of the tournament. And today, I'm going to explain to you exactly these differences and how Olise is simply becoming one of the best players in this World Cup. He is on the verge of breaking the record for the most assists in a single World Cup edition. Pelé managed 6 assists for Brazil back in 1970, and Olise now has 5 assists after the round of 32 match against Sweden. But before explaining how he is achieving such exceptional numbers after a turbulent preparation, I want to ask for your like and your subscription to the new channel. We need you to keep creating content. I am counting on your support. Thank you. Well, let us start from the fact that before the World Cup, there was a huge debate in France about where Olise should play. Because for Bayern, he was always the owner of the right flank. But for France, Deschamps, at one point, had to decide whether to put Olise or another player to keep the 4-3-3. Until he tested Olise through the middle, saw he had potential, and started using the 4 big attacking players: Mbappe, Dembele, Olise, and someone else, whether it was Barcola or Doué. However, Olise had not yet shown for the national team the football that delighted everyone at Bayern Munich. And so the fans began to wonder, is he not performing the same way because he is, in theory, playing out of position? Since for Bayern, he plays on the right, and for France, he is stuck in the centre playing behind Mbappe. If we look at Olise's best moments for Bayern Munich, we will see that he had exorbitant numbers. It was 57 games for Bayern Munich, 25 goals and 28 assists. And in the Champions League, the toughest tournament, he played 13 games and had 13 goal involvements, with 6 goals and 7 assists, and many of his stats came from the right wing. Since we are talking about Mbappe, if we hit 50 likes here, I will also make a video analysing Mbappe's tactical game with France, because there is a dark side that nobody talks about that made him perform so well. So leave a like. And well, if we analyse Olise's game for Bayern Munich, we will see that at Bayern Munich he has a more aggressive role and a much wider position, given that Kane is the one who has more freedom to move. So much so that, for Bayern Munich, we see him making flashy plays much more often with his dribbles to open up the defence and give his assists, whether to Kane or to Luis Diaz. We can also see, at Bayern Munich, him swapping positions and having a certain movement coming from the right to the centre, because that is precisely one of the pillars of Kompany's team, except his movement is much more limited to the movement of his teammates and not due to his own intuition or will. But this specific pillar of Bayern Munich helped Olise be so, quote-unquote, versatile when he started his preparation for the World Cup. Before starting the preparation, Olise's focus was totally on Bayern Munich, where his plays were mostly concentrated on the right. And if we look at the friendlies that preceded the World Cup, in the game against Brazil, he starts the game in the centre, manages to give an assist, plays a good game, and has a good involvement, but he is still not the one from Bayern Munich. Against Croatia, he starts on the bench and only comes into the game to get a few minutes, so we cannot even analyse it. Against Ivory Coast, it is the same thing. He involved himself well in the game there for 45 minutes, but came off at half-time. But in this match, it is worth noting that he is already being tested more on the right wing, and his performance is a bit better than when he had been playing through the middle, stopping being just behind Mbappe and acting as a shadow striker. However, everything changes, and the debate over whether he should play in the middle or on the right wing is settled in the game against Northern Ireland. Olise played as a right winger again and simply tore the game apart by having more freedom than when he played behind Mbappe. He scored a hat-trick, and it was one of his best performances to date in a national team shirt. There, theoretically, we found his place. Dembele would play through the centre to leave Olise more comfortable on the right wing, where he played similarly to what he showed in Germany, with more freedom to create. And then we finally reached the World Cup when France faced Senegal, and France's first 60 minutes were strange. It was not the easiest of games, and the team took a while to settle. Olise started on the right, just as he finished the game against Northern Ireland, but France's attack simply failed to perform the way we expected. Doué, Dembele, Mbappe, and Olise were not managing to click into that aggressive and lethal performance that we know they have. And it was a good test against a solid defence and a good team. The match goes to half-time at 0-0, with an air of concern for France, and then Deschamps makes a huge change at the break. Dembele and Olise swap positions again. Olise returns through the middle, but now with a free role to move around and swap positions with Dembele at will, without needing to just be Mbappe's second striker and worry about holding a central position. And this transformed the man's game. Olise starts to be heavily involved, gets right into the game, and starts tearing it up. We saw that the man was making history in the World Cup. France won 3-1, with an assist and a great game from Olise. Against Iraq, there was no doubt whatsoever. The formation was set. He already started through the middle, with all that freedom of movement that made such a difference, with Dembele out wide on the flank. And here it is worth highlighting that Olise and Mbappe have played together more times as a duo than as a trio alongside Dembele, so that is why they have better chemistry. This might seem bad, but in reality, it left plenty of room for the evolution of the entire French attacking system. If Olise was already shining before finding his position, now it was just a matter of specialising more and more there. Mbappe was always great. Doué or Barcola had more specific roles that complemented their teammates. Now it was just a matter of Dembele finding himself and gelling with Olise and Mbappe. And that started happening right against Iraq. In the second round of the group stage, Olise provided 2 assists again. Dembele did not have one of his best games, but managed important stats like his first ever World Cup goal in his 3rd tournament appearance. And he also gave an assist. France won 3-0. In the final group stage game against Norway, Olise had a quieter performance, but that is the advantage of having such lethal forwards. Dembele finally broke his duck and scored a hat-trick. The French attacking system worked like poetry, and the future looked like a golden path filled with goals and assists. Against Sweden more recently, Olise almost scored an anthological volley to break his duck and score his first World Cup goal. Unfortunately, the goal did not happen, but he provided 2 assists. It is simply incredible. This story and effort of Olise to adapt to different roles. At Bayern, he is an aggressive, dribbling winger. For France, he is a cerebral maestro without losing his magic. The next chapters for Olise look promising.